Dragon clan, Quanyou Tongren, Reira, the imperial princess who is about to be buried in the dragon belly in the future, put on a crown and began her legendary life. Ignite the enemy, dance with the dragon, resist strong enemies from the outside, and rebel internally. The old gods were whispering, and under the shadow of the red castle were the murmurs of ambitious men. The sun sets, the sacred tree collapses, winter has arrived, and the long night permeates, but no one can take the dragon and kingdom from my hands. Keywords of the novel. Quanyou's strongest national glory. No pop-ups. Quanyou's strongest national glory. Complete collection download. Quanyou's strongest national glory. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. The Queen who will be fed dragons in the future. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The Queen who will be fed dragons in the future. Starting from the conqueror Aegon, faith belongs to the 7 gods, honor on earth belongs to the king, and a crown is forged with blood and fire. At this time, it was April in the sunny spring, and all things were born. The grass was green, and a towering, magnificent fortress stood on the hilly terrain. It witnessed the establishment of a dynasty, with nobles, knights, and earls all stepping into it, determining the fate of this land. Its name is Red Castle, located in the political center of Westeros. King's Landing. Junlin is a typical base city located on the east coast of Westeros, with the Iron Throne symbolizing the Westeros imperial seal in the Red Castle. From the coast all the way east, it is easy to reach an island full of strange rocks and volcanic landforms, Longstone Island, which is also the territory of the Tongren family. In the garden of the Red Castle, a young girl with silver hair and drooping eyes sat crooked under a heart tree, seemingly taking a lazy nap. A red leaf fell off and landed on the unopened page of the book. The slightly pale hands on the page revealed the protagonist's restless heart. Did it still fail? I can't go back. The soul inside the girl's body has been replaced. She was originally a newly graduated female college student who was eager to start her own life, but was mercilessly brought into this world. Ah! The girl sighed expressionlessly. She had also watched the popular TV drama, Dragon Family, and even the original author's novel. How to say, the protagonist she travels through, Kingdom Light, Rhaenyra, is not a simple character. As the eldest princess of the empire, she went to war with her half-brother Aegon II, vying for the title of the 7 kingdoms. However, she herself also rebelled and was fed a dragon by her own brother. As for how could people betray and become estranged? Well, this original person is not a good person. When occupying the throne, he acted harshly and lost the hearts of the people. When facing the nobles, he also played cards poorly and did a series of absurd things. And her younger brother was also a tyrant. In short, the bloody era initiated by the Black Party, the Original Party, and the Green Party, the Aegon Party, was known as the Dragon Dance. The Tongren family went from prosperity to decline as a result, until Daenerys, the father of the powerful dragon mother, the Mad King Iris, reached the end of the kingdom. Dragons had long been extinct, and some even devoured wildfires in an attempt to hatch dragons, until Daenerys hatched Tongren's last 3 dragons in the Red Wasteland. Now Rhaenyra is the eldest daughter of King Wesseles. Her mother was bedridden recently, and although she was kept secret, Rhaenyra already knows that her mother forcibly gave birth and passed away. Even her younger brother died in infancy. This is all because the king bears significant pressure. The kingdom needs an heir, and he and the queen's child, only Rhaenyra, survived. At this moment, the king and Prime Minister Haetar were discussing the disloyalty of their brother, Daemon Tongren, and the issue of selecting an heir in the Red Castle. Rhaenyra gave up her attempt to return to the real world. From the initial panic she felt when she came here, to now being able to calm her mood a bit, her purple pupils showed sadness. Oh my goodness! What kind of hell is this? Uncle Daemon, his good friend, the aristocratic old town of Haetar, the unborn enemy brother, the betrayed Night Cole, malicious conspiracy planning, and the hatred of the subjects to be reasonable, there aren't many teammates, there are old six everywhere. How else are we going to fight? Even the last illegitimate children who were won over immediately left the female king's side as soon as they rode the dragon. The air was filled with the fragrance of flowers and plants, and the faint sunlight lazily hit the branches above the girl's head. Ranella let out a slight sigh, but she didn't worry too much anymore. If it comes, let it go. I still have time to change the fate of feeding the dragon. Moreover, in this small Westeros, there is still the game of the old gods, and at this time, we have not yet entered the era where the magic tide stops and dragons no longer appear. The power of miracles, also known as magic, is widely present. I just don't know why, except for magical creatures like dragons, the world has never shown any miracles. Perhaps this small red castle has already appeared, but no one has recorded it, and the dark whispers of the old god have already sounded. There are too many secrets, and Ranella touched the book in her hand. This is the note of the Prime Minister, Basil, who was highly valued by her great-grandfather, King Jerrys of Rinrui. It tells the story of some significant events in Tongren. Ranella discovered some shadows hidden under the Iron Throne from the clues in her notes, such as the scholars in ancient China. The spring and autumn brushwork was not uncommon. Moreover, in this era, although important positions such as ministers, lords, and kings were held by nobles, the scholars were the core of governance. Without them, the territory would be paralyzed. A bachelor often excels in skills such as raven crossing, management, herbalism, etc., and the lord will also support these scholars who help him manage his territory. But is this really good? Do you not see the aristocrats of the Wei, Jin, southern and northern dynasties, and the common participation of large clans in the change of political power in ancient times? These are the power of countless noble families, not to mention the land of Westeros, where the second and even eldest sons of the nobility have become scholars, and even the sons of the kings with inheritance rights have become scholars. The dragon less Wigan. Reasonably, the emperor with a desire for power has come to the throne, unable to sleep well at night. What's even more terrifying is that the power of the school city has always been held in the hands of a family. Hightar in the Old Town, the current prime minister, the enemy of Ranella in the future, and the Queen's party. So, public opinion will inevitably turn towards the enemy, and Ranella closed her eyes. This is something that the original person did not think carefully about. The power of speech is in the hands of a small number of people, and knowledge and communication channels are also in their hands. Ranella wants to change this, but the road still needs to be taken step by step. In addition, the current King's Landing is also in the hands of her own uncle. Daemon Tongren, and her father is getting angry about this. Tongren with dragons is the true Tongren. But dragons are also different. This is a well-known fact. Sitting on the Iron Throne now is a gentle and obedient king, known as the Prince of Summer, who enjoys singing, dancing, and knightly ceremonies. And his brother, Daemon Tongren, rode the blood-colored dragon Quanyou. He was handsome, brave, and majestic. Due to the displeasure of the Prime Minister towards him, he repeatedly changed his position, and until now, he has become the commander of the Imperial Guard, leading 2,000 golden robes to patrol the royal city. He is not close to people, chopping off the hands of thieves and the feet of criminals. Some people call him the Prince of the Capital, while others call him the Lord of Flea's Nest, wandering around taverns and gambling dens. His own brother was cursing him fiercely, and he was unusually angry because a golden robe had reported him. Just after the queen passed away, Daemon got drunk in a brothel and told his confidants that the deceased prince was the one-day crown prince. This ungrateful scumbag, the white-eyed wolf, King Wessels gasped urgently and slapped the wooden table in front of him, his anger seeming to burn into substance. I am his brother, but he treats his blood relatives like this, his nephew. Seeing that the king had been blinded by anger, Otto Haytau, who had been silent beside him, squinted and said, Prince Daemon despises the Iron Throne. His ambition as a wolf is evident. Your Majesty, please make up your mind. The choice of heir brought a strong wind to the throne, and at this time, Otto Haytal had not yet married his daughter to the king in front of him as his successor, but his mind was on establishing Ranella as the heir. In his heart, Daemon Tongren would surely be like the cruel Meg, the famous tyrant, to let the light of the kingdom succeed, just like Daemon becoming the ruler of the 7 kingdoms. Weselis coughed heavily and called for the imperial guard who had been waiting in the corner. "Cole, go help me find Ranella. She has been angry these days and asked her to come see me." After a while, he said, "Forget it, you go protect the princess first." "Yes," the silent white knight bowed and slowly exited the dimly lit room. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Dragon Spits Fire. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Dragon Spits Fire, Royal Highness Princess. White Knight Criston Cole walked slowly forward, knelt on one knee, and interrupted Ranella's contemplation. The proud head of the White Knight looked down at the ground until Ranella's command came from ahead for him to stand up. Criston Cole couldn't help but feel a bit stunned as she looked up. At this moment, Ranella was widely loved by her subjects, her beauty was flawless, and she was known as the Kingdom Light. Tongren's true dragon bloodline was well reflected in her, and her fine silver hair was braided and wrapped behind her ear. A pair of pure purple pupils seemed neither happy nor sad, and the sunlight seemed to favor her, casting a faint light ripple behind her. "White Knight, why aren't you guarding my father's side?" Ranella asked indifferently. The maid next to her, Eli, also looked curiously at Cole. "On the king's order, come here to protect the princess, sir, please do as you please." Ranella continued to bow her head, immersed in the monk's notes. Criston Cole's face flashed with an imperceptible smile, and the guard walked lightly beside him, not looking askance, yet feeling a little sad about the princess's recent neglect. Ranella pondered to herself, "This Cole is really a hot potato," pondering the origins of Criston Cole. P.S. Sir Criston Cole was recently promoted to be the Imperial Guard, the son of the clerk under the Earl of Dondrian in Black Harbor. He was 20.3 years old at that time, and had a talent. He first attracted attention in the palace at the martial arts contest held to celebrate King Weselis's accession to the throne in Nukwin town. He won the group battle first, and in the final duel, he hit the Dark Sisters in the hands of Prince Daemon with a meteor hammer. The king laughed at this, and the prince was angry. Then he presented the winner's crown to Princess Ranella, 7 years old, and begged to wear her keepsake in the long gun contest. After getting permission, he really showed his skill, not only defeated Prince Daemon again, but also took down the brave and skillful Cargale twins, Sir Alec and Sir Eric of the Royal Guards, but finally lost to the Earl of Lemon Malister. Cole was once infatuated with Ranella. As a teenage girl, she would always call him "my White Knight" during her spring days and plead with the king to make him her personal guardian. Cole was a good White Knight, but later, a series of love-hate entanglements led to Criston Cole and Ranella falling out, eventually joining the Green Party and becoming Ranella's #1 enemy. He did many things that hurt Ranella to the bone, and the two of them died in old age and had no contact. When Cole wanted to elope with Ranella, Ranella refused him and said that she was a true dragon bloodline, and if she wanted to wear a crown, she would bear its weight. Moreover, if Criston Cole broke the oath of the White Knight, she would not believe the marriage oath he had made. Therefore, Cole blacked out on the spot. At that time, netizens also said, "Cole, when you dream back in the middle of the night, have you ever thought of that infinitely beautiful Ranella in your teens?" Ranella is also a bit speechless. Cole and her original body's love-hate, I don't want to get involved. It doesn't matter who is right or wrong anymore, and now things are not out of control. Just give it a careful beating, don't ruin my business. Sir Cole, who was slightly sad in his heart, had already been given a big cross by the Royal Highness Princess and was determined never to tangle with him. Ranella doesn't want to create an ultimate boss for the future, and the fact that she loves and hates someone to the point of causing death indicates that this guy is an explosive bucket, and distancing himself early is the right way. But now that my wings are not abundant, it's still possible to wrap them up a bit. Men and women with romantic minds are quite scary. After only a moment of thought in her mind, Ranella had already thought about it and said to the maid who was adding water to her cup, "Ellie, accompany me to the dragon's den." Ranella's former guards, maids, and jesters have all been laid off by herself, leaving only an inconspicuous maid named Eli to accompany her. Ranella is not used to having so many people serve her, and it's also difficult to guarantee their loyalty. Since she can't handle it, it's better to show fewer weaknesses. So Ranella, along with Kristen Cole and Ellie, set off and arrived at the dragon's lair not far from Red Castle. Just as they arrived not far away, a huge roar echoed through the sky. Shiga! Giant wings came into view, and two huge dragon beasts were playing with each other in the sky, occasionally spitting out columns of smoke. Covering the sky and blocking the sun was Renella's first feeling when she first saw a giant dragon, and the dragon's blood in her veins also faintly boiled, reaching its peak when she saw her own dragon. The golden dragon, perched not far away, heard its master's call and flapped its wings before landing in front of it. Renella stepped onto the dragon wings with familiarity, sat firmly in the seat on the dragon's back, and issued the command to take off in the ancient Valerian language. Shiga! Syracuse let out a loud hiss, flapping his wings and chasing the two giant dragons soaring ahead. Dragon Flame! The command, also issued in the Valerian language, spewed out a huge fireworks from Syracuse's mouth, which was even more intense and long-lasting than the dragon flames of the two dragons ahead. Against the backdrop of the fireworks, Renella's restless body seemed to have some strength about to break through the cocoon. "Your Highness, Royal Highness Princess, it's a real dragon." The people in the dragon cave who looked up at the sky below, and Eli who was looking at Ranella, all sighed. Riding the Syracuse around the dragon's lair for a few laps, Ranella finally calmed down a bit. Now Ranella doesn't want to be in the limelight yet, so she hasn't flown over to overlook the entire city. After all, the birds that come out of nowhere are bound to face fierce winds and showers. When she first came into contact with Syracuse, Ranella was still a bit uneasy. Syracuse's movements seemed somewhat puzzled, as if he was facing the master but not the master, but in the end they both accepted Ranella. To prevent her from being burned to death by Long Yen, many dragon trainers have been burned by their own dragons, and there are even records of wild dragons eating humans. Fortunately, Syracuse is relatively a gentle and ladylike young dragon, and Ranella has been driving her since she was 7 years old, when she was still a little mother dragon. Of course, this is for Tongren, who has the bloodline of a true dragon. When encountering others, it is inevitable that they will be burned to ashes by dragon fire. The majesty of the true dragon cannot be offended. What is that peculiar impulse? It feels like Ranella was leaning against the wings of Syracuse, thinking about the feeling of breaking out of the cocoon at that time. Cole came not far away and said to Ranella, "Royal Highness Princess, your Majesty said that you should ride less dragons. I'm afraid there might be danger in the sky." Renee Lamian Noodles replied without changing her color, "I see." Syracuse casually folded her wings, but in fact, if she felt someone nearby moving, she would definitely spray a mouthful of dragon inflammation. Ranella comforted and caressed Syracuse's wings, which she believed was a small means of enhancing feelings and calming emotions with the dragon. "Syracuse, it seems that your dragon flame power has increased a bit." Shiga. So it turns out that the underground fire on Longshore Island makes you very comfortable, doesn't it? End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Syracuse in Dragon Cave. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Syracuse in Dragon Cave. The name Syracuse is derived from the name taboo of a goddess in ancient Valeria. It has a clear yellow color, a large and very fierce body, and is a dragon belonging to the princess. It is well fed, but Ranella thinks this is not a good thing. If left unused for a long time, the claws and fangs will degenerate, especially since the enemies of dragons are not all simple minions. Therefore, Ranella asked Syracuse to go hunting in the northern waters of King's Landing every day. Sometimes when Syracuse rested, he would land on Longstone Island, which is rich in underground fire resources, filled with sulfur, flames, and rocks. It is also the breeding and growing tribe of the Tongren dragons. The dragons in the dragon den are all young dragons, with a population of about 10 to 20. This is also the most prosperous era of the Tongren dragon. Ancestral dragons such as Reira have not yet died, and the Mesozoic dragons are also in their prime, while young dragons are born in batches. Such a favorable environment has also planted seeds for future bloody infighting. Dragon seeds and illegitimate offspring with the ability to control dragons are ambitious, controlling the giant dragons within their clan and shedding the blood of sin in the sky. Reira looked at the playful dragon with a smile on her face, but in fact, she was speechless inside. If only I had an artifact similar to the Deathwing in WoW. The dragon soul, the dragon swarm would not be my enemy. If she dared to oppose me, I would directly launch a cataclysm. Let Westeros be purified. The dragon's nest is located in the Ren Hills, which used to be a church. After a battle, it was transformed into a nest for Tongren dragons. Not far away, there are scholars and attendants recording the shape and habits of the giant dragon. Guards carry spears and shields and guard near the dragon's nest. This has always been a forbidden area for the people, and no one wants to be the dinner of a certain dragon. The palace scholar who was not far away saw the princess coming and immediately came up to pay respects, intending to impart knowledge to the princess. Reira noticed that he was wearing a bachelor's necklace around his neck, which was made of various materials such as silver and black iron, and knew that he was a knowledgeable doctor. When scholars enter the city as apprentices, once they have achieved success in a certain field, they will be awarded a specific metal chain link. Only when enough chain links are created can they obtain formal bachelor's qualifications, and the color of the chain also shows what disciplines the scholars are proficient in. Bachelor, may I ask what you are researching? Your Highness, Royal Highness Princess, I am recording the gender of the dragons and studying their habits. These are valuable research experiences. Oh, that's also something that my great-grandfather valued the most about the research of the King's Hand, Master Base. His book, Dragon, Saurosaur, and Long-Winged Dragon. An Unnatural History of the Dragon Clan, is a very important book. The scholar laughed heartily. Anyone interested in dragons will not miss this book. The bachelor looked very proud, and Reira not only had some speculations. As expected, the bachelor replied, Royal Highness Princess, Friar Base is my uncle. I was interested in the dragon since I was young, and always pestered him to talk about the dragon until he graduated from the school city and came to the court to serve as a bachelor. Reira suddenly realized, the bachelor naturally explained to himself, the power of dragons comes from flames, which is not controlled by their gender, just like Reira and Balerion, they are equally powerful. Your Royal Highness Princess, you also have the power of blood and fire, said the scholar meaningfully. Reira nodded solemnly and replied, this is also my responsibility. Bachelor, descendants of dragons, will their body size decrease? Well, I haven't researched this yet. Bachelor, Reira said solemnly, dragons that grow in dragon dens will definitely degenerate. The dragon in the dragon's den gradually became smaller in size, as recorded in the history of the Seven Kingdoms. The size of the giant dragon was surprisingly huge, but after the blood dragon danced wildly, the final giant dragon was only the size of a small dog, and even gradually disappeared. At that time, the king was known as the Dragon Disaster, not only due to the gradual cessation of the magical tide, but also because Reira felt that there was a mastermind behind it. The scholars studied giant dragons and even planned the extinction of the Tongren family dragons, which later became a well-known fact. As for why, even the Church of the Seven Gods is plagued by bloody power struggles, and it is actually unknown who the person in charge of the school city is. The stage of the dragon is the sky. Being fed and imprisoned in the dragon's den is the sorrow of the dragon. Reira patiently said to the bachelor pondered for a moment, and even nodded in the end. How can your Highness Royal Highness Princess see this? Because the later history illustrates this, there may still be a record of you. Ranella couldn't answer like this, she could only say, this is what Syracuse told me. Since I let her hunt from the sea, her body size has become larger and her flames have become more intense. Swarax may have just added a meal. Anyway, he boasted and didn't make any drafts. I'll deceive you for now. Ranella talked with the master for a while, and the master smiled and said, Your Highness Royal Highness Princess is a good dragon knight, who knows the habits of dragons very well. Ranella also developed a desire to win over this bachelor and invited him to join the teaching in the Red Castle. The bachelor readily agreed. Because there is only one king's heir in the Red Castle, and Ranella's father and mother have always loved their eldest daughter, Ranella's entire childhood was happy and joyful. Her father also trained her according to the way of cultivating heirs, usually allowing her to listen to the imperial council, serving as a waiter, martial arts instructors taught her swordsmanship, and scholars came to teach her how to learn. Ranella invited the scholars to be one of her teachers, the king naturally has no reason to hinder. Ranella's goal is to have her own team as soon as possible. As the eldest princess, she cannot open her teeth and build a mansion. She has neither civil servants nor military generals in her hands. Can she rely on the flames of Syracuse to secure her position as queen? I don't want to become the half-year queen of my original self, ruling only the 7 kingdoms for half a year and then being driven away by my subjects. Moreover, the imperial meeting is filled with Green Party figures, and when they arrive, they will all unite by the side of the queen, a group of unruly officials and thieves. In the future, the father will clearly identify her as the daughter of the king, so Ranella holds great power. However, regarding inheritance rights, there will definitely be many swords and swords involved. Watching Syracuse soar in the sky, Ranella didn't want it to end up trapped in a dragon's den. In the future, Syracuse will die in a rebellion at the dragon's nest, killed by the mob of King's Landing City. As for why the dragon slayer can easily reach the dragon's nest and find its weakness, Syracuse will suddenly go berserk and land, no one can know. Ranella also had the intention of having Syracuse practice flying to the ocean. Syracuse was not the only dragon that was torn apart in the riot and assassinated by conspirators. But without Ranella from Syracuse, the outcome will undoubtedly not be good. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Rewards. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 rewards. These young dragons, Ranella looked at them and felt a bit complicated inside. A dragon knight can only contract with one dragon. Even her own descendant, Danilise, who hatched 3 dragons and was known as the Mother of Dragons, could not break this contract. When the 3 dragons grew up, except for the black dragon who had contracted with Danielle, the green dragon and the white dragon were all locked in the pyramid by Danielle because she couldn't control those 2 dragons. Dragons without dragon knights are generally referred to as wild dragons. The most famous wild dragon in the era of blood dragon dance was undoubtedly a giant dragon called Greedy Dragon. It made a living by eating dragon eggs and poaching on Longshore Island. It was ferocious and cruel, and no one could tame it. Ranella looked at the giant dragon in the dragon's den and felt very sad. In the future, when the dragon battle began, she didn't know how many would be enemies with her because they had made contracts with other dragon knights. As the struggle between the Green Party and the Black Party intensifies, illegitimate children with the talent of dragon tamers flock to divide up the dragon belonging to Tongren. Of course, this is only limited to Tongren's illegitimate children. Valerian, Setiga were also nobles of Valeria. When the Great Cataclysm of Valeria occurred, Tongren's family moved to Longstone Island not far from Westeros. Valerian and Setiga intermarried with Tongren for generations and settled on Tide Island and Crab Island not far from Longstone Island, but they did not have the right to control the Tongren dragon. At that time, the Free Fortress of Valeria ruled the entire world, whether it was the Trade Federation or the nomadic tribes on Doslak, under the shadow of dragons and magic, all surrendered to the rule of the 14 Fire Peaks. The Lorne River War launched by the Free Fortress of Valeria involved the deployment of 300 dragons, and in an instant, all the rivers were burned dry. During the Free Fortress period, Tongren was probably similar to the small lords under the 14 Flames. 12 years before the Great Cataclysm, there was a girl named Danes the Dreamwalker, who was the daughter of the head of the family at the time. In her dream, she foresaw the apocalyptic catastrophe, so her father moved with his family. At that time, the wealthy knights, Sitiga and Valerian, who were similar in status to the small nobles of Tongren, also moved away from the Fortress of Freedom where the Great Cataclysm occurred. After Igan ruled the Seven Kingdoms, the Valerian family, also known as the Sea Monster family, had the merit of following dragons. Moreover, the tribe developed maritime trade, formed a navy, and served as naval ministers several times, making them one of the most powerful feudal lords. For example, the port town on Chaotu Island is said to have developed better than Junlin. At this time, Valerian, the head of the family, was Count Chorus Valerian, the Sea Snake. He had sailed the Sea Snake and completed 9 great adventures, and his gains doubled the assets of the Valerian family. Although some of them were lost on the way back, the rare treasures he brought back, such as elephants, silk, and spices, made the Valerian family's wealth soar to the top of all Westeros, even wealthier than the Lannister and Haytail families. At the same time, the name of the ship also became the origin of Colin's nickname. And his wife is also a heavyweight figure, with the ability to control dragons. Tongren, the eldest granddaughter of King Renrue, Princess Ren, is widely loved by her subjects. This is Renella's aunt generation, a strong competitor. Renella instantly cleared her mind and ordered the guards and servants in the dragon's den to be gathered together. Princess has orders, everyone pay attention. Some of them walked over silently, while others hesitated and dared not approach, looking chaotic. Renella frowned. It seemed that her reputation was lacking on a daily basis. Everyone only sees her as a perfect exhibit, not a successor to a divine artifact. Junlin City will never lack unruly people. The Queen Sexy of later generations was so cruel that she couldn't stop the citizens of the city from cursing her cousin. The Empress Dowager Syracuse let out a dissatisfied scream, his wings vigorously flapping against the ground, and the dragons in his lair roared, deafening one after another. The crowd suddenly fell silent, and some people's legs even trembled. After all, when the giant dragon ate, these people had all seen them before, and when it took a bite, it was crunchy. Renella walked towards the top of the crowd and waited for everyone to stand still before continuing. You are my people, the lambs of the 7 gods. You have made contributions in guarding the dragon's nest. You will continue to serve the royal family in the future. A sparse chorus echoed in the crowd. Renella signaled to Eli and the maids to bring some fine wine and food. Today everyone has a reward, everyone has a share. The crowd suddenly began to chirp. Someone is asking, what did your Highness Royal Highness Princess say? It seems that she is going to give us a reward. No, the princess will never mind me and other untouchables every time she comes here. Your Highness Royal Highness Princess is so kind. Ellie in the crowd had to loudly maintain discipline. Renella continued, one by one, take the rewards from me. Ellie wanted to take on the job, but was rejected by her. The people in the crowd were in a flurry, and Renella helped her forehead and said, come one by one, don't cut in line. Kristen Cole and the palace guards also took action. Whoever dares to cut in line will take the sword hilt in their hand and hit the head with a blow. The first person in the crowd received meat patties and wine from Renella's hand. Renella glanced at it and had a clear idea in her mind. These people standing in the front row, judging from their clothing, should be responsible for more dignified things in the Dragon Cave, such as the Tsaiji officer and the captain of the guard. Renella smiled and said, this adult has been working hard to feed dragons on a daily basis. The Tsaiji official was flattered and replied, I dare not. It is my honor to be able to support the royal dragon. Later, Renella personally rewarded the people behind her with food and wine until a little back seat. People's clothing changed, some with patches, and some even had mud marks in their hands, making them look like people from less affluent families. The people in the front row even looked at them with disdain, seeing Ranella personally distribute food to them. These people feel a bit ashamed of themselves, but Ranella still treats them equally and occasionally complains about their hard work. After all the personnel had received it, Ranella ordered a rest, and the financial officer in the dragon's den naturally followed suit. The familiar guards gathered together to eat and drink, and the clerks and financial accountants also returned to their offices. People doing dirty and heavy work are also gathered together, as if the rest time is so wonderful. Ranella walked up with Ellie, but Kristen Cole had a hint of obstruction, as if worried that the commoners would harm the princess. Ranella shook her head and gestured for him to step back. Seeing the princess coming, the crowd was a bit panicked, so Ranella smiled and signaled to the crowd not to be nervous. The leader gave her a seat and she sat without any hesitation, causing Cole and Ellie, who followed behind, to be shocked. Some people in the crowd were also surprised. The leader was a little worried and asked, "Your Highness, Royal Highness Princess, please forgive me. We are dirty and messy. We are afraid that we will stink the princess." "It's okay," Ranella said with a smile on her face. "Come and see you guys, Lala." Ranella asked them what they were all doing in the dragon's den. Some said they were handling dragon dung, while others said they were responsible for transporting dragon food. Later, Ranella asked them a few more questions, such as how many people there were in the family and where they all came from. Most of the people are villagers from under the royal leadership, while a small number are citizens of Junlin. For example, the one with the head is an orphan from Junlin background. "Your Highness, Royal Highness Princess," the villain wanted to apply for the golden robe, but he didn't meet the standard, so he came to the dragon cave to beg for a living. The person who answered was Arthur Weishui. He was also the first one in the group when he received the reward earlier. While the princess was speaking to everyone, the clerk, the financial officer, and the scholar he had just met were drinking at a table. Ranella sent someone to bring abundant food and drink to the descendants of the base cultivator. You can barely see Ranella's figure from here. The clerk, who was born in the royal family, first said, "Your Royal Highness Princess, you are so kind." The Tsaiji official also agreed and said, "With the wind of her grandfather Renrui Wang." The nobles of all sizes in the royal realm generally support the Iron Throne. Today, the princess has made such a considerate move, which has truly bought the hearts of the people in the dragon cave. The bachelor smiled silently and drank heavily, saying, "I am blessed today with the wine of the royal family." End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Strolling the King's Landing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Strolling the King's Landing. Before leaving the dragon's nest, Ranella still gathered the crowd and said, "Today's reward is not the last time. If you are meritorious, not only will there be fine wine and food, but also silver deer and golden dragons. As a princess, I never break my promise, it depends on whether you are loyal or not. Oath to die loyalty to the princess, rest assured, I will uphold my duties." The crowd surged, and people of all sizes, 100 or 200, had high morale. She gave Arthur Weishui a positive look as she shouted hard, and Ranella nodded in satisfaction. She turned around and left, where she couldn't see her. Behind her, Kristen Cole turned back and looked at the young man with dissatisfaction. Arthur Weishui was still immersed in Ranella's gaze until his companion signaled Cole's warning before replying. And at this point, Ranella has already walked away. On the way, Ranella was thinking about whether she had done something wrong, and then took a deep breath, feeling very satisfied with this trip to the dragon's den. If you don't strive for the heart, it will naturally not stand on your side. There is a benevolent princess's name, better than the Mages Nizi, who has been scolded for a century in the city of Junlin. The latter is a name that was originally mocked by the people, and Mage is a famous tyrant in the Tongren dynasty. Treating the people with kindness is also Ranella's original wish in her heart. Ranella knows very well that if she wants to save her life and become a queen, she won't rely on harsh tyranny. Dragon's Lair is also my own way out, it's really not possible. I'll ride a dragon and run away. That's why Ranella is so focused on the matter of the dragon's nest, and there are also some of her thoughts. When she takes full power, she will establish a Dragon Affairs Management Bureau to oversee the royal dragon. Anyone who wants to collect dragon eggs, cultivate young dragons, or tame old dragons must obtain her consent. Joking, the giant dragon is equivalent to the Emperor's forbidden army, or the most elite type. Have you ever seen the Emperor hand over elite troops to other members of the royal family, such as uncles, aunts, nieces, cheap brothers, and even want to ride a dragon to eat me? When you lead the dragon, you see, I won't give you a few years of time. Of course, this is a later part. Rhaenella certainly covets the giant dragons in the dragon den, but now she can only establish good relationships with the people and dragons in the den. After all, one person can only tame one dragon, and it would be great if she could tame more dragons. At that time, I will be an army alone, who agrees and who opposes. Royal Highness Princess, Eli looked at Rhaenella with a giggle and worried. Rhaenella finally withdrew from her fantasies and wiped away the non-existent saliva from her mouth. Say to Ellie, part of today's reward will go through the princess's portion, and part will come out of my little treasury. In the Red Castle, the example of Royal Highness Princess is very important. After all, this is the only heir of the king. The financial and tax expenses within the jurisdiction of the monarch and the royal domain are mainly responsible for the kings and affairs of the 7 countries, for which the Chancellor of the Exchequer is responsible. For example, hunting competitions, martial arts competitions, military and political defense, etc. The 7 kingdoms of Westeros only have their royal territories directly under the royal family, while other principalities belong to vassals, such as Stark in the north, Lannister in the west, and so on. The wealth they generate often goes to the king for taxation, leaving behind a portion to govern their own vassal states, and the rest is the heritage of their own families. Lannister in the west is wealthy enough to rival the country, and the wealth of the River Bay is also not to be underestimated. So much so that when the royal family was about to go bankrupt, they invited wealthy family lords to become the hands of the king. Examples that belong to princesses include a portion of the imperial forest and a small portion of the wealth of nobles and nobles, which are allocated by the court's finance officials and are not included in the cases under the jurisdiction of the finance minister. In addition, a grain shop at a port outside of the city of King's Landing and a hotel inside the city were Rhaenella's mother's private property left by the queen. Uncle Daemon Tongren gave her a casino at the age of 10, but she did not accept it. However, half of the annual income was sent to Red Castle by the nobleman who owned the casino. Her grandfather, Duke Roderick Eileen of Eagle's Nest, and uncle had unfortunately passed away, and her cousin Jenny succeeded her. Although she was not very close to Rhaenella, Eagle's Nest would send a batch of valley specialties such as wheat, pumpkin, and cardamom every year, as well as a portion of the golden dragon to the queen. Rhaenella also has a share. This is all the content in Rhaenella's little vault. Eli has been responsible for keeping statistics on this aspect, and in addition, there is a maid named Yapu. Rhaenella used to never pay attention to her property safety, but now she definitely needs to pay attention to whether her maid is reliable, so she won't let Yapu interfere for now. Upon hearing Rhaenella's arrangement, Eli naturally knew how to proceed. Rhaenella nodded in satisfaction as we grew up together. Rhaenella didn't pay attention to the talents around her before, but she definitely had to choose and use them for me. The reward this time won't cost much, but in the future, it will be used to reward and win over the people, and the expenses of knights and soldiers also need to be prepared in advance. As for now, the Empress Dowager has just passed away, and the heir has not yet passed away. The city of Junlin is not under her jurisdiction, so we still need to wait for a good opportunity. In the face of today's actions, Ellie is not surprised, she just feels that the princess has always had her own opinions, and she will do whatever she commands. And Criston Cole, who had witnessed the entire process, was somewhat surprised to himself. Her Royal Highness Princess is not so naive as before, but like a political creature. The handsome knight frowned inwardly, but when she thought of the Queen's recent passing, Rhaenella, as the eldest princess, must have felt very uncomfortable. These days had begun to grow, and her worries had turned into heartache. Ranella certainly wouldn't know what the knight behind her was thinking, and even if she did, she wouldn't care at all. I just want to save my life. No one seems to be eaten by a dragon, okay? Walking in the city, Ranella looked around. At this time, the city of King's Landing was greatly improved in terms of public security through the rectification of Uncle Damon Tangrian. However, it still looked so shabby, dirty, and murky. The air with a slight odor flowed among the crowd, and the monsoon blowing from the port could not dispel the smell in the nose. The streets are crowded with people, some coming out of flea streets, some entering churches from the crowd, and more people selling and buying goods from outside the city of Junlin in the market at this time. Junlin was still considered a peaceful and prosperous country, but there were still so many poor people in flea nests, with people in tattered clothes mixed in and pickpockets accidentally stealing the merchant's wallet. The guard walking ahead shouted and cursed loudly, asking the people to make way, and Ranella immediately stopped this behavior. Seeing the Royal Highness Princess coming, the people and the golden robe turned over and saluted. Ranella kindly comforted the people and told the soldiers not to beat and scold the people. Cheers came from the crowd. Occasionally, some common people and citizens come to pay their respects. Ranella sighed slightly when she saw this. Sometimes, superiors don't need to be very wise, they just treat others leniently, and there will be people to cheer for you. Ranella thinks that in this era where aristocratic masters are superior to ordinary people, there is still a lot she can do. Ranella noticed some of the floating children in the city, some of whom came from the merchant class of citizens, while others were from the city side and relied on the city of Junlin for their livelihoods, but they were unified without aristocrats or farmers. The nobility did not rely on the city to live, and had their own castles to divide, while the farmers below naturally lived on their own land. Ranella thought for a moment. Once the war started, refugees from outside came. It was hard for ordinary people in the city to find jobs that could support themselves and their families. Although Junlin City was prosperous, it was like a foam that would burst with a poke. No wonder during the Seven Kingdoms rebellion in later generations, the city of Junlin was so chaotic. If she wins the throne, optimizing the industrial structure and improving productivity is an urgent matter. Otherwise, once ambitious individuals stir up trouble in the imperial palace, the Red Fortress will have to break through on its own. In the city of Junlin, there are aristocratic eyeliner, hidden dangers of secret sects and the poor. There are many problems. Ranella walked around outside and felt numb. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Father. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Father. As we were about to reach the Red Fort, a cough came from the shadow of a residential building. Kristen Cole raised his large sword and the guards beside him were also very nervous. Slowly, a figure emerged, with the sunlight leaving marks on his face as sharp as a knife. The silver hair indicated the identity of the newcomer, Uncle. Ranella looked at the newcomer, gesturing for the guards not to be nervous. My dear uncle won't harm me. Put down all your weapons. Facing Cole's slightly scrutinizing and hostile gaze, Damon Tangrian smiled at the words and said, My little pearl. Damon Tangrian has always liked Ranella as a niece, bringing her gifts beyond the kingdom from a young age, telling her stories of her adventures, being considerate and meticulous. It can be said that Damon Tangrian is a glimmer of Ranella in the original work of Blood and Fire. I didn't see Calaxel in the dragon's den. Where did you hide it? My blood bug is hungry, I'll let it fly away a bit. Father is angry, I know. Ranella didn't pester him as usual, which made Damon Tangrian a bit uncomfortable. Uncle, it's better to drink less at the bar. Ranella felt a bit disgusted by Damon's alcoholic smell. Standing so far away, she still drifted over. There was nothing said between the two, and there was a moment of silence. Damon is a proud person, no one can hear him soften, but his face still shows a look of guilt towards Ranella, but after a while, he becomes firm. Ranella didn't care about him and turned to walk towards the Red Fort. Damon wanted to say something more, but Ranella had already walked away. When Ranella stepped into the Red Fort hall, the night had quietly climbed into the sky. The candle with spices was lit by the servant, reflecting the bright and quiet atmosphere in the spacious hall. The ground is covered with brocade from Mill, and the vase on the wall contains roses and honeysuckle picked in the morning. Ellie poured Renée a glass of sweet ale she had made herself, and Renée moistened her throat before putting it down. She changed into a dress under the care of other maids. At this moment, the Red Fort is so peaceful. If possible, Ranella hopes to continue like this. The sound of armor colliding outside the door. Royal Highness Princess, Your Majesty wants to see you, cried Kristen Cole. The door was opened, and Ranella walked out with a slightly tired expression on her face. I know now, sir. Cole nodded and turned back, his steps seeming a bit messy. The maid lit the lamp and led Ranella forward. Father King, King Weselis, who was reading with a lamp on, did not put down his book upon hearing this. After a moment of silence, Weselis continued, I heard you saw Damon today. Ranella nodded. Wesley patted the book on the table and said, he still has face. Ranella didn't speak upon hearing this. The relationship between the king and queen is very good, and Ranella has always grown up in a happy life. However, the issue of inheritance has been troubling the couple until the pain of childbirth came to take away the queen. Emma Eileen, when the king chose to open his abdomen and take out his young son. Between a husband and a king, Weselis chose the latter. But fate seemed to be joking, and Ranella's brother Prince Bellin also died a day later. Ranella, my child. Wesley's gaze towards Ranella was filled with tenderness. I have decided to hold a ceremony in 3 days and appoint you as my heir. Even the gods cannot change my decision. Wesley's eyes were filled with the figure of Ranella from childhood to adulthood, and the kindness in his eyes gradually turned into determination. He chose the former between a father and a king. Weselis has been trapped in the game of heirs since the 101 Congress, but he never gave up choosing Ranella until death struck. Father. Ranella walked forward, letting Weselis take her hand and walk towards the wall and fire. This is a secret that every generation of family heirs must keep. Our family's language is blood and fire have the same origin. Ever since Dreamwalker Denise guided the family to Longstone Island and Conqueror Igan unified the 7 kingdoms, Tongren has kept such a secret. In the future, the long night will come, and the cold wind in the far north will resound through the earth. And Tongren, there will be a savior to dispel the long night, do you understand? Our dragon dynasty is arranged by fate. Besides, your great-grandfather also issued an order that if anyone other than us hatches a dragon, we will exterminate his entire clan and leave no future troubles. Weselis said seriously to Ranella, the Bravos people once stole 3 dragon eggs while your great-grandfather was in office. This has always been his concern. Of course, except for Tongren, no one can hatch dragons again and become dragon knights, which is determined by our bloodline. In the Trade Federation, Valentes has so many Valerian remnants, and they also covet dragons, but we are always the only ones with dragons. Father. My child, Wesley patted Ranella's head with his hand and continued, my heir will only be you. I hope you can fulfill your responsibilities. Father will always support you. Late at night, Ranella still couldn't fall asleep. Lying on the silk quilt, Ranella was thinking about this period of history amidst blood and fire. Why has Weselis always had the issue of inheritance rights? Of course, it is because he was a hard-earned king. This brings us to the laws of Tongren kinship and the laws of Andar's legitimate son inheritance. His succession came from the 101st National Assembly convened by King Geoffrey of Rinrue, which decided the candidate for the crown prince. At that time, the candidates included the daughter of Geoffrey's eldest son, Aemon, the uncrowned Queen Ren, and the eldest son of Bellin, Wesley. King Rinrue chose the latter, which was also Tongren's submission to the Grand Noble of Andar, where the blood law was smaller than the legitimate law. In the original history, Ranella was regarded as the heir, and after the queen tampered with her last wishes, she established her own son to succeed to the throne. After a bloody civil war, Ranella's son Igan III succeeded to the throne, and the subsequent law even determined that the inheritance rights of women in the Tongren lineage were always lower than those of men, and the system of eldest succession was officially established. Tongren never appeared as a queen, even the dragon mother Danelise did, and in the end, she gave a big gift package to the savior. In the midst of blood and fire, there are several historical periods that have had a profound impact. In addition to Renella's accession to the throne, there is also Meg's war with the church after having a second wife. Meg eliminates the hidden danger of religious power surpassing royal power, but he himself is known as the cruel Meg. Just as in the 101st Congress, the nobles were more eager for Wesseles to succeed, now Wesseles is facing numerous difficulties in wanting Renella to succeed, so Wesseles held a banquet and made all the nobles, big and small, swear allegiance to Renella, and Renella officially gained the title of righteousness. But if my younger brother Aegon II appears, the nobles will definitely jump up again. Without Aegon II, there would also be Regun, Jang, so Wesseles once again wooed the Valerian family and arranged for Renella to marry them, and then embarked on a love-hate relationship. Renella lay back on the big blanket, sighing helplessly. How could it be so difficult to become a queen? Ellie, who was guarding the knight by the bed, was startled when she saw the princess suddenly sit up, rubbing his eyes and yawning. He said, "Your Highness, do you want to drink water?" Renilla shook her head and instructed Eli, "You can also take a soft blanket to sleep with." The master and servant fell asleep again, speechless all night. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Haojimei Alison. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Haojimei Alison. Water can be released as a hot spot again. Renilla instructed Eli that she has been feeling like her body is more resistant to high temperatures lately. Ordinary people feel that the hot water that burns is just a slightly cool warm water for her. It's just that it's much lower than the non-burning of the Dragon Mother, and in the original work, Dany is not harmed at all in the fire. Renella speculated that the palpitations she had transmitted a few days ago should be attributed to the Valyrian bloodline magic, because in addition to that, she also had an additional connection with Syracuse, and the dragon seemed to be able to sense and respond to the emotions of the dragon tamer in some way. Rather than simply acquiring talent, it is more like a return of talent. Valyrian Dragon King is not only able to achieve this, but it is only at the level of an ordinary dragon tamer. It's not easy to obtain top talents like Daniele's. What she awakens should be the great wizard talent that Valyria Dragon Kings crave, such as the ability to revive extinct dragon eggs, with a life-saving mandate. If she can steadily enhance her strength, perhaps true blood and fire will flow inside her body. If Danielis could recognize her dragon spirit talent, she would definitely be a powerful Varelian wizard as well. Renella is not the son of prophecy, a bit regretful, but perhaps we can find a way out from Valyria's legacy treasure. After a brief hot bath, Renella tied up her silver hair and allowed the maid to wipe off the water droplets with a warm towel. When Renella returned to her palace, her former maid Vivian Tan was having a great conversation with a beautiful and charming-looking woman. The woman was wearing a palace-long dress, her hair tied into a popular style among aristocratic ladies, without wearing any jewelry. She only wore a towering black stone necklace hanging around her neck, and on her left finger was an emerald ring symbolizing the Haytail family. It is said that it was specially brought by her brother Sir Haytail from the old town. I don't know what Vivian said, but the woman smiled with a reserved smile without answering. After seeing Renella walk in, the two of them gave her a half-body salute. "Renella, congratulations." The girl wore a sweet smile on her face, looking as if she already knew the news circulating in Red Fort recently. After all, her father was the famous Otto Haytal, the prime minister and the hand of the king in the imperial council. The identity of this woman is about to be revealed, and it turns out to be Alison Haytail, the best beauty of Princess Renella. Renella has not seen Alison for the first time, and Otto Haytal has a clear idea of what he wants to do, whether it be for the nobles of King's Landing or Small. Alison was not only Renella's childhood friend, but also her companion. After Renella's mother passed away, Otto Haytal made her daughter often accompany the widowed King Wesseles. Renee Lamian Noodle smiles, but she lives in Bungbu. What family ethics drama. My best friend became my little mom. I treat you as a friend. Do you want to be my stepmother? Afterwards. Ranella certainly didn't want to have multiple nominal mothers, and only then did she come up with a big plot to snatch the throne. However, now the nobles of Westeros, big and small, would not agree to a king who is widowed and unmarried. And my father, although he loves me, is also an ordinary man who wants to have a family. Without anyone to accompany him during his days at the Red Castle, he was in pain, so when the Hightar father and daughter devoted themselves to the camp, his attitude was tacit approval. For this reason, she shook the youngest daughter of the sea snake Valyrian family, who was originally considered the successor by default. The sea serpent is even more at odds with the Iron Throne. Originally, the 101 Grand Council's uncrowned queen failed, and now she still humiliates Valyrian's daughter. It's strange to be able to reconcile with the Iron Throne. Of course, these are all later plotlines, and now Haojimei has not yet become a stepmother standing there, laughing and feasting, looking at Ranella. It seemed that she was genuinely happy for Ranella's inheritance. It was hard to see if Ranella's appearance at Haojimei was genuine or fake. But the plan of Hightar and Shueching must be true, as written in the original text of Ice and Fire. Marvin sat on a stool and said, "Valyria's witchcraft is based on blood and fire. How do you think dragons become extinct? The dragon slayer with an iron sword did it." He spat and said, "There are no places for witchcraft, prophecy, or glass candles in the world Shueching is trying to build, let alone dragons." Alison exceeded the task, leaving only 4 dragons in the group after the fierce dance of the blood dragon, and soon headed towards extinction. Tongren's national fortune was split in 2 with a slap. Why does Shueching hate dragons and the magic represented by dragons so much? Is there any discord between the Andar people and the Valyrian people in the past? Or did the old gods have any plans to implement the prophecy of the birth of the son of fate? Upon hearing Hadel's compliments, Ranella also smiled and talked to Alison, seeming to be a girl who had withdrawn her guard in front of her best friend. This is all thanks to the loyalty of the Hightar family. My uncle Daemon is just a brave warrior, but he doesn't know how to govern the country and ensure the safety of the people. Ranella spoke ill of her uncle without any psychological burden, as he couldn't hear her now. To be honest, if Alison really planned everything for the family, Ranella could still accept it, but she couldn't understand why Alison was like a lonely patient pulling herself, not only resisting everything arranged by her father, but also without hesitation hurting and exploiting Ranella's affection. After knowing that they had given birth to an heir, the 2 of them would definitely turn their backs, but in the end, they still put on a green dress representing their call for vassals to fight. "Well, I'm afraid you don't know. Ranella roast in her heart that some of your family vassals are still hardcore gangsters, even in laws. They are firmly standing behind Ranella. For example, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Lyman Bisberry, was an old vassal of the Haytail family. However, during the discussion at the Imperial Council held after Wessel's death, facing the unfriendly gaze of almost all members of the Green Party, Count Linman insisted on defending Ranella Tongren's inheritance rights, rather than supporting Alison Hadel's eldest son Aegon. "I'm old, but I'm not old enough to sit and wait for you to usurp power," Lin Man said at the Imperial Council of Wessel's Eye, so Criston Cole killed him. At this thought, Ranella's heart was filled with a murderous intent, and the corner of her eye flickered towards the White Knight who was standing guard not far away. It was this person who murdered the vassals of the underworld, triggered a coup, and caused a complete upheaval in the Wang Ling and Jun Lin. A cold sweat broke out from Criston Cole's back, as if he was being stared at by a giant dragon. He looked around a few times but didn't notice any danger, and suddenly felt a bit strange. Ranella held it down and let out a slight sigh. If Cole were like in the original, I would have to send him to meet a stranger. Feeling that the atmosphere was a bit off, Alison broke the silence and said, "I heard that a scholar in the Dragon's Nest joined the Red Fort. Ranella, do you know what's going on? I requested it from my father, Master Ramos, who is knowledgeable enough to teach me the history of the Tongren family. Then we'll learn together again." Alison looked very happy. "Let's go to class together," she urged, holding Ranella's hand. The maid next to her, Vivian, looked dissatisfied at Eli, who was inseparable from Ranella. Alison gave her a quiet glance, and Vivian lowered her eyes. "Ranella, why do you seem to have changed someone lately and haven't discussed Nemelia's authority with me, as well as Sir Christopher Cole?" Alison knows that Ranella likes this Loina national heroine, so she often uses this topic to attract Ranella, and Kristen Cole, also a knight who many maids in the Red Castle love to secretly scrutinize. Ranella, on the other hand, said lightly, "Because I am not a girl anymore, but the crown prince who is about to inherit the kingdom." Ranella knew that Alison wanted to change the topic, and the drunken man's intention was not about alcohol, but about Vivian Tan. "I already know that Vivian should be close to the family of the Heidels, and there are many servants of such a large family in the Red Castle." But for a while, Ranella didn't want to make a fuss, so she deliberately ignored these eyeliner that sometimes bring some news, and wanted to lead the snake out of the whole look, "Isn't anyone in a hurry?" I hope Alison from Haojimei can be more witty and not get involved in asking her maid questions. After all, she lives in an old town and doesn't live on a narrow beach. Why bother being so broad? End of this chapter. Chapter 8 is the prologue. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 is the prologue. Ramos was a humorous and witty bachelor, whose speeches were easy to understand and more engaging than the lectures given by his father, King Weselis's former Grand Secretary, Renette. The latter is of advanced age, serious and rigid, seasoned and steady, and is a personal advisor highly valued by the father. He has a considerable voice in the Imperial Council. At the same time, he was also responsible for the education of Crown Prince Ranella. Ranella felt that he was an overly solemn old man, and the classes he taught were boring, like her teaching director in college. In addition, there are 2 or 3 bachelors who serve as his deputy and assistant. Ranella is particularly impressed by a monk named Eustace, who belongs to the Red Castle. At this time, Renette was summoning his deputy. The scholars of the Red Castle, to send the letter crows to various parts of the country, summoning nobles of all sizes to enter the throne and participate in the coronation ceremony. King Wessels had already publicly announced his successor at a recent imperial meeting, and Ranella was also present at the meeting. Her father had already ordered her to participate in state affairs but did not express any opinion. Grand Academician Renette was a consultant and friend of Weselis, naturally holding a supportive attitude. Otto Haytau, the king's hand, was politically opposed by his uncle Damon and remained neutral on this matter. Chancellor of the Exchequer Bisberry nodded slightly and blinked at Ranella, who responded with a smile. Ranella had a plan in mind for the monarchy of finance, and the old man swore to defend his rights to the death in the original work. Ranella had good intentions towards the old nobleman who had been serving as Chancellor of the Exchequer since his great-grandfather, King Renrue, in the Imperial Council. At this time, the Imperial Council of Wessels I consisted of the following individuals. The Hand of the King. Sir Otto Haytau, Captain of the Imperial Guard. Sir Harold Westling, Grand Bachelor. Lunette, Minister of Justice. Count Leono, Strong, Chancellor of the Exchequer. Count Linman Bisberry. At this time of the Imperial Council, the position of Minister of Maritime Affairs was not established, but there was still a chair waiting for its owner at the table. Even the jesters and fools in the Red Castle know that the position of the Sea Lord is prepared for the Sea Serpent Valerian, and when he comes to the throne, the king will allow him to join the Council of Lords. Sea Snake Corps Valerian also arrived at King's Landing from Tide Island today, but his attitude towards this matter is ambiguous. The Minister of Justice, Count Leono, has just arrived at the court and has no influence or side bias, and he also supports this matter. His eldest son Halwyn was appointed as a captain of the capital garrison, his second son Laris became a confessor to Weselis I, and his 2 daughters became maids to Princess Ranella, indicating the loyalty of the strong family. Leono was a newly appointed minister in 105, so his eldest son, second son, and 2 daughters are still on their way to King's Landing. The strong family on the road had a lively atmosphere but always carried a hint of disharmony. A carriage was driving on a rural road, and inside the carriage, two strong girls were whispering, discussing and longing for the life of the King's Landing. Laughter was coming from inside the carriage. A young man was sitting at the edge of the carriage, seemingly tired of the chatter of the girls inside, his gaze fixed on the leader of the group. The leader is naturally Haojimei Strong. The eldest son and heir of Duke of Hellenberg, Leono Strong, was strong and handsome in appearance, leading the way and surrounded by the knights of the family. Brother, the person sitting in the carriage finally spoke, realizing that he was the second son, bent foot, Reira Strong. One of his feet twisted at birth, so he could only limp along with it. His foot injury also meant that he couldn't ride a horse like his brother did. Our father has become the Minister of Justice. Do you have any plans in mind? Reira stared closely at the warhorse under Haojimei's seat, as if he was about to mark a blood hole. Haojimei didn't look back, nor did he realize that his younger brother's gaze was very strange. He just said in confusion, "Of course I followed my father's arrangement. I will work with you to protect His Majesty the King's Landing and the Red Castle. Do you know that it is said that Princess Reira will be crowned as the Crown Prince, and the city of Junlin may not be peaceful? Her uncle Damon is the leader of 2,000 golden robes, aren't you afraid?" Reira said meaningfully before the ministers could send a letter informing all the nobles. Reira inferred from the situation and information that Reira was going to become the Queen Mother. Although she had not yet arrived at the throne, Reira's thoughts had already drifted to the Red Castle before waiting for her brother's reply. Bentfoot Reira Strong continued in an unpredictable tone, "Princess Reira is the light of the kingdom, loved by the people, and destined to ascend the Iron Throne in the future. I don't know how many young knights are fascinated by her, and there are plenty of pursuers who want to win her favor. My brother, you are also a famous young handsome man. Don't you have any idea of becoming a prince of the Tongren family?" Haojimei Strong blushed upon hearing this and quickly said, "Brother, don't talk nonsense. I dare not have such thoughts. My father will definitely beat me up." The knights of the neighboring commoners heard this and began to coax, "That's nonsense. When we go to King's Landing, we must discuss it with Sir Stephen. It would be great to have a glass of wedding wine in the future." "That's right, Haojimei. You need to know that love grows over time." The well-intentioned teasing of the crowd caused a burst of laughter, and the women in the carriage couldn't help but curiously open the curtains to inquire. The atmosphere was getting better and better, but only one person gritted their teeth. "Inheritance belongs to you, and the best warhorse belongs to you. The girls in the family territory only care about you, the elders like you, the knights love you, and I, as a second son, have nothing." Bent-footed Reira withdrew his gaze, but his fingers tightly squeezed his sick leg. Within the Red Fort, the decision made by the king was not opposed by anyone, and the ownership of inheritance was firmly established. The letter Crow sent this information to the whole country. River Bay Land, Tyrell family. An elderly man sat in the main seat, listening to the scholar in charge of managing the Raven report the contents of the letter. After listening, he said to his wife, "A beautiful noblewoman, a young dragon, I don't know if it can fly." The noblewoman nodded lightly. Northern Territory, Stark family. A historic castle, with a strict father and a kind mother, and a middle-aged boy sitting at the dining table, eating a chicken leg with honey sauce. The bachelor came down from the crow's nest and seemed to have something to report. After listening to it, the older Stark pondered for a while and then ordered the bachelor to convey an order to the nobles in other territories. While the young man was still persistently dealing with the roasted chicken in front of him. West End, Lannister family. A letter was thrown into the flames, and the sound of a violin rang out in the luxurious hall. The lion stone sculpture seemed to be roaring at an invisible enemy. Haojimei, the Tully family. The middle-aged man hurriedly ran into a hall, where the voices were bustling and everyone was discussing, each holding their own opinion. The middle-aged man wiped the sweat off his face. Valley, the Eileen family. A beautiful girl was whispering to her partner, and then pointed her finger in the direction of June lynching Stormland, Iron Islands. The Ravens left, and Reira stood on the terrace of the Red Castle, watching them fly into the sky and gradually disappear. After a while, she spread out her arms as if embracing the sun about to set. The dusk elongates and transforms her shadow, like a dormant dragon, yet it seems to be a classic action of a character in a certain drama, welcoming the beginning of the prelude amidst the clouds and smoke of the past. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Oath Night My Basic Plate. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Oath Knight My Basic Plate. Good day, Royal Highness Princess, said a knight in white armor to Reira in the corridor of Red Castle. Sir Harold Westling was a knight of the Westling family and the captain of the Imperial Guard of Wesley I. Harold took over as captain from Sir Ryan Redwyn, the legendary knight who passed away this year and former captain of the Imperial Guard. Good day, sir, thank you and the sworn brothers for their loyalty to the Iron Throne. The Imperial Guards are sharp knives in the hands of kings, sworn brothers. The flag of the Guards is 7 white swords wrapped around a crown. They are elite guards created by Igan, the conqueror of the Tongren family, to protect the royal bloodline. They are often praised by the people as white knights or white robes. They swore a lifetime of service until death, even in old age, with physical disabilities or mental breakdown, one should continue to serve. The Imperial Forest Iron Guards do not enfeoff land, marry or have children, and are only loyal to their monarchs. The primary responsibility of the Imperial Guard is to protect the king from harm and threats, but strictly speaking, whether the Imperial Guard protects others, even the royal family, depends on the individual will of the king. Some kings think it is natural to send Iron Guards to protect their queen, children, brothers, sisters and even cousins. They even send Iron Guards to protect their lovers, mistresses or illegitimate children. But other kings may choose to let royal knights and soldiers complete these tasks, while keeping the 7 Iron Guards by their side forever, serving left and right. Due to Wesley I's affection for the Queen, Iron Guard was often sent to protect the Queen and Reira, to the extent that the new White Knight, Criston Cole, had recently become Renella's personal guard. But the White Knight does not necessarily mean complete trustworthiness, as one of the White Knights of Dany, the mother of dragons in later generations, said, Balistan Selmy is not a bookworm, but he often browses the White Book and consults his predecessors' deeds. Some of them become heroes, while others are weak, scammers, or cowards, but most of them are just mortals. Agile and stronger than his peers, with better sword and shield skills, but inevitably become victims of pride, ambition, lust, love, anger, and suspicion. He still desires wealth, power, or commits other sins that torment mortals. The excellent among them can still restrain themselves, fulfill their duties, and end up with a sword, while those who fall participate in the game of power. Overall, there are still a few white knights who betray their own monarchs. The idols of most young people in the 7 kingdoms are legendary knights, and most of these people are also white knights. This is a knight culture unique to Westeros, which makes nobles proud, just like the tradition of devout faith in the 7 gods. Reira did not indiscriminately throw Criston Cole to feed the dragon out of this consideration. Firstly, Cole's betrayal has not yet begun, and secondly, she cannot kill the White Knight. Knight culture has a profound influence in Westeros culture, and like guest rights and sacred marriages, it is an unbreakable value orientation. Although during the 7 Kingdoms rebellion, etiquette and music were disrupted, and everyone rushed to violate them, it is a special situation in a chaotic world. Those who violate these secular rules have paid certain costs, such as Reira Tangrian and the Wolf Lord Robert Sher. Tucker, the former abducted the Winter City Rose Lyanna in the wrong spring, triggering the usurper's war with Robert Baratheon, while the latter entered a red wedding and buried a family of wolf souls. It is interesting that Westling, who came from Harold's background, is the girl that Robert Stark will fall in love with in the future, Jenny's family, who will betray her sacred engagement as a result. This is a prestigious family with a long history in the western region, with its fiefdom located in the Cliff City. The family motto is, honor, not fame, and Weselis I trusts him very much. In the original work, Harold devoted his entire life to the court, especially to Ranella. He had known her since she was born, and he never hesitated when the Green Dragon Party and the Black Dragon Party began their civil war. In addition to Sir Westling, there were 3 sworn brothers who swore allegiance to Ranella after the death of their father King Wessel's Eye. They were not only the Imperial Guards of Wessel's Eye, but also the Queen Guards of Ranella, who fought for her until death, all sacrificing themselves in their positions. One of them was Sir Stephen Darling, who fled the throne before Ranella's brother Aegon II usurped the Iron Throne and was crowned. He fled overnight with his attendants, 2 clerks, 4 guards, and the crown of Viserys, preparing for Ranella's coronation. This Sir Darling comes from a royal family and is the uncle of the Earl of Twilight Valley, Gundor Darling. The Darling family is also a steadfast and loyal royal party. In fact, almost all the nobles of the royal family, big and small, are loyal to the Iron Throne and the will of Wessel's Eye, willing to fight for the princess. They can be said to be the most solid support for Ranella, such as Twilight Town, Stone Dance City, and so on. Ranella has always regarded the royal domain as her basic foundation. Unless she dies a big death and causes anger and resentment, the nobles here are all inclined towards the underworld. Managing Junlin, eliminating the nails of the inner Sea Tar family and other ambitious individuals, and then radiating the entire royal realm, is Ranella's initial plan, and this is also the Longjong strategy in the power game. Jinka can contact his cousin Eileen's family, form an alliance with the northern border, help level the river, point to the bend of the river, drink and retreat from the stormy land, and retreat can defend Junlin and maintain his reputation, making it difficult to implement the High Tar dragon slaying plan. Instead of being absent from the throne day and night like the original owner, the vacuum of power is taken away by other Tangrian, which originally belonged to the precious wealth left by the father king in the kingdom for so many years. As for why you say that, it's because the princess lost the hearts of the people after a great death. She was originally very beloved. Once Prince Daemon issued his call, the people of the river region responded. Whether knights, soldiers, or humble farmers, they all remembered the kingdom light, favored by the previous king, and remembered her smile and demeanor during her teenage years cruising along the Trident River. Hundreds, followed by thousands of people from the Haojimei region who tied up their swords, donned their armor, or grabbed pitchforks, hoes, and makeshift wooden shields, flocked to Herrenberg to fight for Wessel's precious daughter. In addition, this is also true among nobles, and Ranella is also a white moonlight in the hearts of many nobles. The Three Rivers Lord was more concerned about gains and losses, and initially did not want to respond rashly. However, the trend quickly led them to fall one after another towards Queen Ranella. Sir Forest Fry came from the Twin Cities to assist, and he was the foolish Fry who proposed to Ranella in the past. He has now grown into a majestic knight. Count Samwell Blackwood raised the flag of Ranella in Raventree City. He had previously lost a duel for her token. The winner, Sir Amos Bracken, instead followed his father and led the Bracken family towards Aegon. In addition, the Mouton family in Nookwin Town, the Piper family in Red Powder City, the Lute family in Harrow Town, the Derry family in Derry City, the Mellist family in Seaside City, and the Vance family in Lushire City, unlike the Vance family in Arryn City who support the young king, also declared their support for Ranella. The old Count of Red Powder City, Petit Piper, spoke out the hearts of many people. I once swore to her with a sword. Now that I am old, I am not old enough to forget the oath, and the sword is still in my hand. This is the political legacy left by the father to his children. The father of the Hightar family sacrificed his daughter for political gain, while the father of the Tangrian family has always provided shelter for his daughter. I declare that this game has been killed by Wessel's Eye. Ranella couldn't help but laugh out loud. As long as you stay calm and not waver, saving your life still seems to be very successful. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. The Daughter of the True Dragon, Heavenly Destiny Queen. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. The Daughter of the True Dragon, Heavenly Destiny Queen. In the blink of an eye, a period of time passed, and the city of Junlin became even hotter and more bustling. This was because the nobles and vassals from all over the country came with their families, guards, and followers at night. Some relatively small nobles may not bring their families, but guards must be brought, because medieval journeys are not as beautiful as imagined. Criminals, disabled people, thieves, and murderers will still hide beneath the seemingly calm surface of the royal kingdom, and when you are not paying attention, suddenly appear, giving you a small surprise. The first to arrive at the King's Landing were naturally the nobles within the royal domain, who were closest in distance, and some of them, or relatives or friends, served vessels both inside and outside the Red Castle. The second destination was the feudal lords and river bays near the royal territory, while the valley was slightly delayed due to the difficulty of descending from the high mountains, and the nobles from the stormy area entered the city in no particular order. Then arrived the people from the western border, and Lannister and his vassals made a generous move, allowing the merchants in the city of King's Landing to make a real profit. The Iron Archipelago is disliked by most people, who practice the ancient path of burning, killing, and looting to please their faith. The god of flooding, just like the priests in the church who believe in the seven gods. If Iron is not fierce and cruel, he is an outsider. The last one arrived was the Northern Territory, where Duke Stark led a large group of people into the King's Landing. That's not right, she patted her thighs. Her fair and tender skin under the dress suddenly turned red, but Rhaenella didn't seem to feel anything. After listening to the report, Rhaenella, who observed the movements of the nobles after entering the city, was greatly puzzled. Go and invite Sister Ramos. Rhaenella instructed the maid standing by to look for Sister Ramos, who was on standby in the Red Castle. The latter followed to a terrace with roses and colorful flowers, which was very spacious. There was also a round oak table engraved with fine patterns, and the princess was sitting in the main seat smiling as she gazed. This used to be one of the favorite places for Empress Dowager in Red Castle, as it allowed for a panoramic view of the distant scenery within the city of King Lin. Ramos cultivator, Rhaenella lifted her chin and gestured for the maid next to her to pour the cultivator a cup of hot tea. The city of King's Landing has been very lively lately. Why don't cultivators go and walk around with their relatives and friends? Ramos smiled wryly and said, the people in the city scolded me for being a crooked person. I was already excluded, and the bachelor's necklace on my body was almost taken back. When it came to the sadness about the bachelor's body, both of them calmly changed the topic and cleared their throat. Rennie opened her mouth and said, there are many nobles in the city recently, but I have one thing that I don't understand. The bachelor has seen a lot, maybe he can help me clarify. Your Royal Highness Princess, it doesn't matter. Why are so many people dispatched from the northern border, and it doesn't seem like they want to attack a nobleman's territory, because the people who live with their families inside, except for some young people who are not very old, are mostly old and weak, and still carry their wealth. Those who don't know think they are here to escape, not the Duke of Stark's men. In addition to the northern region, nobles in other places seek relatives and friends, compete in martial arts, and some are still inquiring about the marriages of men and women of appropriate age near the nobles. Of course, there are also some nobles in other places who are full of gunpowder, and they want to make each other's brains come out as soon as they meet. Represented by this are the two neighbors on the banks of the Trident River, the Brightwood family in Crow Tree City and the Bracken family in Stone Ridge City. These two families are enmities and have been entangled for more than a century. The enfeoffment of the monarch has never stopped their hatred and conflict. When Rhaenella browsed through the aristocratic materials, she was speechless. What if you stab me in the back? I will retaliate against you. Even the Seven Nations Civil War began, when the kingdom was divided, they were still arguing and causing Caitlin Tully a headache. The Brightwood family is also one of the few old aristocrats who maintain a firm belief in the old gods and inherit the bloodline of their ancestors. Their family emblem is a group of crows on a bright red background surrounding a dead fish beam on a black shield, which is related to their ancestral land of Crow Tree City. There is an unusually large ancient dead fish beam in its sacred wood forest. Every evening for thousands of years, flocks of ravens have come to perch on the dead fish beams. The Brightwood family firmly believes that it was the poison that the Bracken family placed on the fish beams of Crow Tree City a long time ago. Ramos pondered for a while, interrupting Renela's thoughts. Your Highness, Royal Highness Princess doesn't know, it's a tradition in the north. Because winter in the north is difficult to spend, the Stark family always has big things to go south, or war, or celebration. The homeless, childless, unmarried, second son, and elderly within the territory knew that staying in the northern region would also make it difficult for them to endure the harsh winter. If war came, they would go on an expedition to the south, indulge in adventure and plunder, and ultimately die in glory on the battlefield, so that their families could have one less mouth to eat. If the celebration comes, ordinary people who cannot survive in the difficult northern regions will also follow Stark southward, eat in the south, go to the royal city, or even further places to make a living. I see, thank you very much, Bachelor, for your clarification. I'll just say, with so many people heading south together, no wonder there are more and more refugees in the city of Junlin in future generations. The flea nest is afraid to explode, it's like an explosive bucket, which leads to the Great Sparrow taking power, and Cersei directly becomes the Queen of Ashes. The Mad King Iris wants to use wildfire to blow up the usurpers, blow up the king over the troublemakers, and there is a famous saying. Let me king over the charred bones and roasted flesh, let me become the King of Ashes. Unexpectedly, what he cannot do makes Cersei succeed, giving the sparrow a big gift, so she is called the Queen of Ashes. Of course, refugees definitely don't just come from the north, and the digestion level in the south is definitely higher. However, social security is already poor, and the lives of the people under the southern aristocracy are not easy. This is also why some soldiers in the northern region are particularly skilled in fighting and understand the strategy of relying on food for the enemy. For example, when Robb went to war, Haojimei was completely looted by the soldiers. After learning about some traditions in the northern region, Renela shamelessly asked the Bachelor questions, and the Bachelor also answered them one by one. The atmosphere between the teachers and students was very harmonious. After the Bachelor left, the maid Eli was busy preparing tomorrow's coronation ceremony for Renela. Uncle Damon came to the Red Fort and wanted to meet his brother Wessels, but he was turned off. Wessels was furious with his younger brother, and his younger brother Damon didn't expect his inheritance rights to be lost, or rather unwilling. At this moment, Damon was very confused. He admired his brother, but couldn't control his ambitions. He swore to want more, which was engraved in Tongren's bones. Even if power and desire were to cut him apart, they could not reconcile. He hopes to get his brother's recognition, but his brother no longer trusts him. He met Renela, who came to deliver some pastries to his father. You're lucky, girl. He didn't lift his eyes and just stared at the floor inside the Red Castle, which was also a familiar place to him. I watched you grow up, growing up to where you are now from a young age. I love you like your father, Damon said in a trembling voice. But I hope you were never born. Damon's voice gradually became firm. If you're not Tongren, that's good. No, if you're my nephew, I'm willing. I will assist you, just like assisting your father. Damon Tongren's eyes lifted, and Renela saw that it was covered in red blood. Tongren, there is no queen. Damon straightened up his proud spine and walked out of the Red Fort to cover up the sense of defeat he carried. In the gradually fading figure, Renela's voice came from behind. Damon, your enemy has never been me. Amidst the intertwined figures of toasters, the hall was overcrowded, with dragon bones representing the glory of Tongren hanging on the walls and lifelike portraits of various generations of family leaders. In the corners, there were also artists and scholars creating and documenting. King Wesley I was in the center of the hall, speaking his voice. His gaze was firm, and occasionally there was a gentle glint when he saw the figure of his daughter. He officially conferred the title of Princess of Longstone Island and her legal heir, and demanded loyalty from the princes. Renela stood in the middle of the crowd, dressed in a black and red velvet attire, with a complex golden lace corset adorned with pearls and gemstones, shining brightly. Her long gold and silver hair was braided and tied up by the maids. All the nobles, big and small, knelt on one knee, and the leading nobles placed their swords horizontally in their hands, pledging allegiance. Wesley I personally placed the crown representing the heir on Renella's head. Renella bowed to her father and turned to face the people, bending her knees in all directions. Daemon Tangrian also hid behind the crowd, secretly watching all of this. The 7 gods are above, and the kings of Tangrian are above. Renella did not fear the stage, which relieved some ministers and nobles. Wessels also looked at his daughter with encouragement and praise. I swear in my capacity as the heir to the kingdoms of Princess Longshire Island and Andar, Lorna, and our ancestors. Renella's gaze slowly swept over the crowd present, including her enemies and friends. I will not impose any sword or dragon inflammation on you, as someone who declares sincerity to me with your sword in your hand. My sword and fire only seek revenge against those who break their promise. My knight wants to kill, only those who bully and harm me. My dragon wants revenge, only revenge against the leader among the enemies. My parents are both proud true dragons of Tangrian. I am the daughter of true dragons and the king of fate. My ancestors came from Valeria, bringing blood and fire to the enemy, landing in the royal realm, and conquering 7 kingdoms. I will become the queen of the continent of Westeros, and the world will pay attention to her because I will be the best queen. Everyone seemed to see a cluster of flower buds blooming in a heart-stopping manner. She is so charming, yet no one can ignore her sharpness like a cold knife light. Daemon Tangrian in the crowd knew that this was Renella's answer to his words. End of this chapter.